ready for Season 4 coming out. At this point, we still do not know the new hero that I would think is coming out for this season. But everybody else is on here, and we're going to try to do as good as we can for all the comps, which is difficult now with having so many. But please let me know down in the comments where you guys think everybody should be placed, where you guys think I should have placed people. Don't forget, like, subscribe, check out all of my other Overwatch 2 content videos, tier list, and let's get started. Honestly, as much as I hate him, I think Cam is S tier. He is super mobile and hard to kill because of the buff that he got in this season currently at Season 3. We're almost in Season 4. But still, I think he is super annoying. He's the old-time Lucio that used to always swing around on point, and now you have a tank who has a shit ton of health, gains shield, and then also gains more shield with his ability, and his ultimate is definitely not too awful. But he definitely is a very strong champ right now, especially if you know how to use him. Mei, I gotta put Mei in A. I almost want to put her in S because she definitely is very meta right now. But the biggest thing is her consistency and damage. She's definitely, arguably, the best peeler right now in heroes as far as everybody else. And her ability, her ultimate is definitely still one of the better ones in the game, and how easily she gets it with she definitely gets a whole lot of ultimate charge from healing herself too, and that definitely stops things like Anna's biotic grenade and stuff. So she's definitely very strong, very good against a whole lot of champs at any role. So definitely worth a choice, no matter if it's role or open queue. So this is both role and open queue. You can't really do Mr. Heroes, but role and open queue. For both, she's viable no matter what. Anna, yeah, Anna I still have to put an S. I think her biotic grenade is still just arguably one of the best abilities in the game, stopping people from being healed. She does a whole lot of damage. She can sleep whomever, which is pretty nice. Nano with anything is also super devastating. She's just a very, very strong champ. The only thing that's remotely bad about her is that she's somewhat pretty decently diveable, but still with how much damage she does and having the sleep dart and to be able to heal herself and even stop you from healing with her biotic grenade, she is hard to kill overall, and definitely one of the best supports in the game right now still. Pharah, I gotta put Pharah in B. Pretty much if she doesn't have pharmacy, she's not the most viable. And definitely because of how many heroes now that can essentially hit her up in the sky, it's hard to consistently make her work. And with how many people that are definitely meta right now, such as McCree and stuff. Soldier is always going to be S tier because of how much damage he can do, heal himself, and his ultimate is good. Sojourn's kind of fallen off a little bit, but definitely deserves A tier. But, you know, these three champs, usually you're seeing one of them in every single comp. And if not, most of the time you still have somebody like Bastion, Ramatra, even maybe a random Torb or somebody that can take care of her. But she's still pretty solid. But McCree, definitely his grenade essentially insta-kills anybody that is not a tank. And he does a pretty good amount of damage just with his gun in general. His ult is definitely one of the worser ones in the game, but definit+y against some squishies, at least you might get one pick with it, so it is what it is. But his grenade is OP as shit. His grenade is S+++. You know, you throw it, you shoot them once no matter where you hit them, and they're dead. So it's pretty OP for sure. Definitely needs a nerf. That's just me. Junkrat. Um, I gotta put an A. I think he definitely is still a very, very strong damaging hero and can definitely stop a lot of things from happening because of that. And even decent against Hammond with the trap. But I just think that he has a pretty good amount of counters. And I think a lot of his damage comes from kind of just more splash damage. But he's super easy to get his Riptire, and his Riptire minimum is going to kill a good amount of people so long as it doesn't get killed or destroyed, if you will. But he's definitely still very, very viable. Um, I still really enjoy running him against a whole lot of people. I mean, he's good at a distance to just lob some stuff, especially against any tank in the game, honestly. And then close range, it's kind of hard to beat him close range depending on who you're running. But definitely, I say range, but as in, if he's got cover. If he doesn't, there's so many people that can just shoot him down pretty easily, so where he won't be successful. Symmetra definitely deserves a minimum an A. I think while her damage output is a little inconsistent, I think, and her ability is not, or her ultimate is not necessarily the best. Um, she's still super strong right now. Her damage output can be super devastating against certain people, like Ryan just getting massive damage output charge. Same with Orisa. Her sentry turns can definitely win some fights in themselves, and then her being able to make her and her team pretty mobile with the teleporter is pretty strong in itself as well. And honestly, her alt chart or alternate fire with the balls are damn near hit scan. They move so fast, so she's definitely a very strong champ. Zenyatta's definitely coming up. I think I think he deserves an A at this point now. Minimum a B. Definitely not S tier, but I think he's definitely changed. A lot of people are making him work a lot better now. It's much harder to dive him with the kick, and you can definitely win a lot of fights because of the Discord. While his healing is not really going to be more than anybody else's, yeah, I think he's arguably the worst healer, like actual healer in itself, aside from maybe Brig, depending on what you're doing with her. But he does so much other things, and honestly, he's one of the better um, champs to have with kind of a dive comp or a Pharah if you're not running pharmacy. Um, just because he can throw the ball in, make sure that whoever's diving gets some heals for a few seconds or a while and make it work. But definitely the damage output and his ultimate is what carries him into A. But his healing definitely on the lower end of it for sure. Kiriko definitely still an S tier healer. The Suzu is the only thing that matches Anna's biotic grenade. Her Kiriko's ultimate is definitely fantastic for the entire team. She can definitely do a whole lot of damage as well, especially if she can hit her headshots. But her healing is definitely very much up there as well. Definitely one of the highest healing output champs in the game right now. But back to kind of Brig, since we brought her up here. She's definitely a little bit better with the changes they made with healing. You definitely feel like you're able to keep people alive a little bit more, but she definitely has to work around her team, and or her team has to really work around her, much like Lucio. But I think she can honestly have the most healing on your team, honestly, and I think her damage output, especially depending on the team comp and the map and everything, she's definitely a lot more viable than she felt previously. There's definitely good ways to run her. I just think as a support character, as far as consistency with both damage and or healing, there's just better options. And Lucio honestly is not it. I think his ult honestly is definitely not as impactful as it seemed to used to be. You know, you wait a few seconds and then it's gone anyway. And that's without even shooting everybody that was affected by it. Um, and while his healing output can definitely be arguably the most on the team, it's not going to save anyone. He's just keeping everybody up, but he's not going to save them from dying at critical health. Um, and honestly, he's definitely not as hard to kill as he used to be. But that part of that I feel like is because there is one less person on each team, so people can focus him a lot better. And because of how strong Anna is with her biotic grenade, it's a lot easier to kill him. Um, but he's still decent. You're definitely going to need another solid, strong healer with him, though. Baptiste, I got to give to A. I think the change with his immortality field, making sure that they have a whole lot more health in it, has definitely felt very strong. It definitely feels like you keep people alive much better, and even if they destroy it, they still have a good amount of health left to where even if you weren't healing them in it, he is keeping them up. He can definitely do a good amount of damage. His ult is definitely the worst part about him. I think the amount of healing he can do with his heal ability plus his actual, alternate fire healing lobs is definitely up there. Um, but the biggest thing wrong with Baptiste is honestly his ultimate, the amplify window or whatever. But honestly, if it was like super great or they changed it to something, then he'd probably be pretty OP, honestly. But still solid, strong support champ. Hanzo, just the inconsistency. You're either going to get a fantastic Hanzo player or a shitty one. But Hanzo, honestly, I feel like is worse and worse because there are so many better choices. Yeah, honestly, Hanzo, while any of these champs can be S or D, depending on who's playing them, I think the viability of Hanzo is definitely at one of the lower points that it ever has been in the current meta. Um, I just think there's so many better options and so many more people to play that are much more viable than Hanzo. Let's see. Let's do Ramatra. I'm gonna give Ramatra A. I think he can still. I gotta put him in S. I think he's still very strong. I don't think he's OP anymore. I think people deal with him a whole lot better, and I think he's much easier to deal with. And I don't think necessarily anything is too OP about him anymore. I just think his ult is hard to work around, and he can definitely somewhat keep himself alive with um, his Nemesis form blocking the shield that he has. There's definitely so many pros to him and not really any cons to using him. Um, but he's definitely not as strong as he was, but I still kind of have to put him in S. I think Moira still S tier. The amount of damage and dive ability she can do to anybody's team is massive, and that also helps her healing output. It's super easy to get her ult, and her ult is definitely one of the better support ults in the game for sure. I don't have anything bad to say about Moira. She's hard to kill. She can move in and out, does a good amount of damage, and a lot of healing output with that damage as well, especially with the change they made to her orbs. Doomfist. Uh, Doomfist, I'm going to put an A. The biggest reason why Doomfist is an A is honestly because if you're running role Q, then he's pretty viable right now with how much he's not necessarily going to get a whole lot of kills, but much like Hammond, definitely a diving tank who is pretty decently hard to kill and can definitely get in and out to where he's just going to really bother you. But he definitely has a whole lot of upside. But in open queue, he's definitely not as good. Having 300 health is not very viable for a tank. Same with why Junker Queen can go in A as well. The tank health difference in open queue and role queue is massive for a few heroes such as these two, and not so much for somebody like Ryan. Um, but still viable. Junker Queen, specific teams, maps, and everything, she's super viable. I think she's really good, pretty decently hard to kill, especially if you're keeping her up with heals. Her abilities and attacks are pretty good wombo combos, and her ultimate's definitely pretty solid as well. Um, but again, she's a lot more specific to make her work. Reinhardt feels amazing right now. I think he is the best tank in the game as far as consistency. A lot of damage with his swing. His fire strikes feel great and do a lot of damage. His ult is not hard to get. His charge is still pretty much insta kill for most of the people, and definitely the massive shield is worth it to protect yourself and your team. And like I was just saying with the difference with open and role queue and tank health, he's definitely one of the tanks that is affected least by that change per game mode. So he's definitely very viable always. Tracer, I don't feel like she's that great anymore. I think she's definitely getting worse and worse, and while she can still somewhat be hard to deal with and she can still definitely dive some supports or backline carries, I think she um, is just not too hard to deal with anymore. I think her damage output is decently low as far as how much damage you can throw into her before she dies, and if she blinks, then she already used that, so it's not as devastating. And honestly, her ult is not always the greatest, so overall, I don't think she is the most viable champ. Um, Mercy, honestly, I gotta give to A. I feel like the changes that she keeps receiving just make her worse and worse, honestly. Um, while it's nice to gain your health from healing, um, it definitely makes her a lot easier to kill. And I do think the amount of healing she can do with critical champs now is nice, definitely much more saving, unlike these two support heroes can do. Um, I just think overall she needs not necessarily buffs, but they really have to just figure out how to rework her to make her more consistent, because her rezzing is great, her ultimate is lackluster, to me anyway, but definitely not a bad support champ. She can definitely have the first in healing, no problem, and the damage boost is definitely super great, especially for certain champions. Sigma, I'll give Sigma A. I think he is a very viable tank. I think he can do a lot of damage. I think he can soak up a lot of damage and or block it. And his ult is pretty devastating as well. So definitely solid. I just don't think he really gets that S tier, because honestly, if you're not hitting rocks, then you're really not doing so much damage as Sigma. So that's just me. Definitely better tank options. Diva, honestly, is a very good choice as well. I think she's arguably the best diving tank right now. We'll give Winston up there an A as well. But ultimate is iffy. It's not too hard to not be killed by it, obviously. Um, and while I don't necessarily think she's going to have the most damage as far as like Having the black hole defense matrix is fantastic, hard to kill, and essentially having 2 lives. And then she can definitely dive and kill or at least massive damage, you know, support heroes, backline units, anybody. So, and Winston can the same. I don't really think there's only a few people that honestly counter Winston super well, but I think he's definitely a solid unit choice against a whole lot of people such as Lucio, Rhine, um, any support main, obviously, any backline sniper such as Widow, Hanzo, even Ashe. I think he's definitely a solid counter against a lot of people. Even Symmetra, he's just very solid choice, but not. He's one of the easier tanks to pretty much kill so long as his bubble isn't bothering you too much. Orisa. I'm going to give Orisa S tier, honestly. She's still super strong. I think she is pretty good against everybody. Her Fortify definitely stops her from being killed by virtually anything. She definitely can do a whole lot of damage. She can definitely, essentially, defense matrix black hole her with her javelin spin and stop people, get people where she wants them. Her javelin does a pretty good amount of damage and definitely backs people off if she needs to, or at least stuns them so that everybody can kill them. There's really nothing bad to say about her. I think she's good in roll and open queue. High amount of damage output as well. Her ult is definitely not super consistent, but still a good amount of damage possibility there. Echo, I'm going to give Echo the nod to A. I think at this point she's a better choice to Pharah if you can hit her sticky ball ability. She pretty much insta-kills most squishies if you hit enough of them. And she's a lot more mobile in the air than Pharah. While her ult is inconsistent, you can still do some pretty good things with that. But again, I think so long as she is being mobile enough, she's pretty hard to kill up in the sky, but still with how many people can now hit her, it's still inconsistent to be able to run her, depending on the comps and the enemy comp. Reaper, I'm going to give to A. I think he's a little down now. I think there's just a lot better choices, and I think there's a lot more people to better deal with him, especially like McCree, because even if McCree sticks you and you Wraith form, then you're out of that. So it's there's a lot of back and forth with Reaper, and for him to be great, you have to be close, and there's a lot of people that are still very good close, and a lot of people to deal with you. But he's still definitely very, very viable in any comp on any map. I just think a lot of people are dealing with him a lot better than previously. Zarya, definitely A, almost S. Again, I just think that there are better tanks right now. I think obviously a lot of people know just don't shoot the bubbles, which is kind of hard to do consistently. You know, you're probably going to throw at least a little bit of damage into any of them, but if you're not doing that, then she's not going to be successful, so it's hard to warrant her an S tier at this point, but she's still definitely very devastating. Her ultimate is definitely very strong, and she can keep herself and or her teammates alive very well. And has the potential to do massive amount of damage. Roadhog, honestly, we'll give Roadhog the nod to A now. I think he is so much better. While Anna's still running rampant with the biotic grenades, he's still consistently pretty difficult to kill because he can heal so much. And while his hook is definitely not as good, definitely very hard to essentially hook one tap anybody, which I know is almost non-existent at this point, but still still very viable. The amount of healing he can do to himself, which gives him a shit ton of ultimate charge, and the honestly amount of not necessarily damage, but pickability. He's definitely still worth a tank choice uh, if you want to. Ashe, let's see. Definitely A. Yeah, I mean, I just don't have anything bad to say about Ashe. I just think she isn't as difficult to deal with as she was. I think the meta is changing a little bit to much closer range units. While she can still do devastating damage, and while Bob is still good and her dynamite burns you for 3 hours, I just don't think she's S tier worthy, but definitely A, definitely still a strong DPS carry for any team. Genji, I still have to put in B. I think he is still just pretty easy to deal with unless it's a really good one. I think he can still do a pretty good amount of damage. It can definitely dive some people. I just think overall he is minimum decently countered by way too many people. And even against something like a Tracer, as far as comparison, at least Tracer can back up and heal herself and is much more guaranteed to be mobile than he is. But damage wise and ultimate wise, he's still pretty solid, but there's still just so many more DPS choices that are better. Sombra, just way too inconsistent. Unless she really gets the drop on you, she's more than likely not necessarily going to kill you, even if she hacks you. And she's just one of those pesky people like these three. She can still definitely be super viable in the right comps and can definitely be devastating, especially with her ultimate as well. I just think the consistency of her as far as really killing people, she's definitely much more of just a utility champ or hero than a lot of other people, but she's definitely one of the best utility heroes in the game. It's just consistency not really there. Torb, honestly not really hard to deal with anymore. I think he's a pretty easy target. While his turret can be annoying sometimes and can get some picks, I think his ultimate is pretty easy to just miss and wait around for it to just go away. And he himself is not going to do super amount of damage. It's just very much, as long as you kill Torb's turret, he's pretty much not viable at all. Bastion I'll give to A. For the last hero here, I think he can still dish out a high amount of damage. I think against pretty much any tank he can definitely wreck them, but I do think he's a pretty high value target to target. And his ult is a little inconsistent and somewhat easy to move away from, or at least not get murdered by. But his damage output can definitely shred some teams, and he can definitely do very well. I just think he is a pretty large and specific target for a lot of teams. But this is my Overwatch Season 4 tier list coming up soon here in a few days. So please, hopefully this helps you get ready for it. Let me know down in the comments where you guys would put your favorite and least favorite heroes. And don't forget, like, subscribe, and check out all of my other Overwatch 2 content as well as a bunch of other games. We will see you guys in the next one.